The next two UFC fight nights are pretty disappointing. After all, have you seen the upcoming fight night cards? First, we have Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez, which isn't a terrible main event. I mean, after all, Rose is a big name and Tracy has a lot of momentum, so it's not that bad if you ask me. I think you guys are kind of hating, but the rest of that card is pretty weak. The one after that is even worse. Amanda Lemos versus Jarobi. Who is that? What is that? And if that wasn't bad enough, the rest of the card is just as bad. And I've seen the MMA fan base criticizing and blaming the women division for ruining these cards, saying that they shouldn't be headlining events. And I'm torn on this because if you ask me, the women's division has been pretty lackluster lately. But I don't want to blame the fighters entirely. If we're being realistic, the UFC has stopped trying to put on good shows once they got that ESPN deal. I mean, have you seen half the fight nights this year? They seem to suppress star power instead of promoting their own fighters and put together half-hearted cards. This has been a recurring problem for years, and that's why I can't wait for this deal to end, dude. I'm actually tired of this shit if I'm being realistic. Even with that being said, that's not what this video is about. The video is about the problem with women's MMA, and what I mean from that is the reason why people don't like it. And I truly believe the main issue is that there's no standout fighter in these three weight classes. At one point you had Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko. They were the main draws for women's MMA. But Amanda retired and Valentina lost the fight, then got a tie in her next one, and still hasn't been very active, probably because of her age. Realistically, she might retire soon. And if you look around the division, you would notice that there's a lot of other people that are kind of gone, or their fan base just turned on them. I mean, like Joanna was great, but she retired. Rose is still around, but she's unpredictable, and you never know which version of her is going to show up. And I feel like a lot of her fans really turned on her after that Carla Esparza fight. And as for Holly Holmes, her only amazing win was against that Ronda Rousey victory. Besides that, she hasn't done anything close, and usually loses to big names. I mentioned all these top female MMA fighters, and they're either slowing down or they're either retiring. That's just the truth. That's just the facts. And I almost forgot to mention, I feel like a lot of casual fans believe that the female fighters have been boring since Ronda Rousey got knocked out, which is laughable because we have had a ton of female fighters like Andrade. As an example, she has 0 fight IQ, but she's practically the female Wanderlei Silva. She spams hooks from left to right. And look, it's not like there's no longer any good female fighters in these divisions. We have a bunch of other killers. Fighters like Grasso, she's obviously the flyweight champion, and she has been very entertaining so far. She's obviously may not have that knockout power like Amanda Nunes, but she is very fun to watch when she's piecing up her opponents. Plus, she's a great boxer and has really good footwork. We even have Macy Barba. She's also known for her aggressive and relentless fighting style. She often pushes the pace and applies constant pressure on her opponents. And there's also Erin Blanchfield. She's also known for her well-roundedness and being very technical. She's great at both striking and grappling, making her a great fighter. We even have Kaylin Harrison, who's in the bantamweight division, who can talk on the mic, and she has the wrestling ability to steamroll everybody because of her size. Juliana Pena is there too, even though her striking looks goofy as hell, but her toxic gimmick is great, and her style is fun, even though it looks goofy. There are hidden gems in all three different weight classes, but I think majority of the casual fans just don't care, and it's kind of simple why. It's mainly because the MMA fighters are way better, and it's not sexist at all. It's the truth when it comes to the skills. And you can tell by the two that there's a huge skill gap, and I mean a huge skill gap. And don't get me wrong, the male fighters tend to have snooze fest time after time. I mean, we had Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis after all, but that's one time. And if I'm gonna be realistic, they don't have as much of snooze fest as a female fight. But it's not to say that they don't have good fights. I swear, time after time, I feel like majority of MMA fans just look at them and figure it's gonna be a boring fight. Like, I swear, dude, it's kind of like this. Look at this example. MMA fans watch an awful Ngannou and Lewis fight. What a bad night. Hopefully the next one doesn't suck. MMA fans watch one bad women's MMA fight. Cancel the entire divisions. It's garbage. But it doesn't matter. I think people just need to accept that women's sports aren't as entertaining as the men's sports. It's nothing to do with sexism or misogyny or any of the other words people like to throw around. What's interesting is MMA fights seem to have a pretty strong respect for women's MMA, whereas the basketball fans disrespect and bash the whole WNBA. and I mean badly. But there's a reason for that though. WNBA never outshined the NBA, whereas in the UFC cards like 248, Zhang and Joanna completely saved our nights and crushed Izzy versus Yoel, which is just crazy to think. But in the same time, the issue is though, for every Zhang versus Joanna fight, there's at least 5 bad fights. Fights that are completely unremarkable that mostly everybody forgets. Like, don't get me wrong, there are for sure entertaining women MMA fights and consistently entertaining fights like Natalia Silva, but on average right now, WMMA just hasn't caught up with the men's MMA as far as skill or entertainment value. But I think it's important to take in the fact that they've been only performing for a little over a decade now. As weird as it sounds, you might need to give the women a 2 to 3 more decades to catch up with the men's fight. It's just a history thing, but in the same time, you can argue that maybe the UFC doesn't have all the best female fighters in their organization, currently like the PFL or One Championship. But women's MMA delivers plenty of good fights and performances. Meanwhile, men's MMA also delivers a lot of boring or lackluster fights, but then people just say it was bad and then move on from it. There's just a special kind of hate for women's MMA that is not warranted, and to be honest, I will never understand it. Overall, for me, it's a mixed bag. I like watching female fights, but there are a bunch of snooze fests, I won't lie. A theory I've been having lately with WMMA is that we're near a big boom period of young talent, because WMMA is now just around the same period where young women who started watching the WMMA greats like Ronda and Misha in 2012 have progressed and evolved in the gym, and now we're breaking through that into the UFC. We have to remember that the men's MMA has been around for decades, whereas WMMA really only built a heads of steam in the early 2010s. So of course the evolution will be slower compared to the men's. The young women who joined into MMA because of Rousey and Joanna, etc., are just entering their 20s, and they're gonna do great. And we've seen some prime examples like Karana Silva, Natalia Silva, Denzi Gomez, etc. So that's why I think in the next few years we're gonna see a new wave of killers. Those are just my 2 cents, but I guess we'll see what happens, you know? I guess my only problem with MMA fans is when they lose their mind over Zhang Weili being in the main card, even when she has consistently delivered bangers. However, the truth is just that the women fights simply do not deliver the potential finishes people want to see at the rate that the men do. It's just the fact that the men are biologically better capable of delivering martial art combat when it comes to entertainment than women. However, I think the narrative will continue to stay until the females overall evolve as much as the guys. Until then, it's going to be the same way. But anyways, guys, what do you guys think of the entire women's problem? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And like always, guys, I'll see you on my next one.